Hello, my name is Opal Singleton. I'm the president and CEO of an organization called Million Kids, millionkids.org. We are all about keeping kids safe from predators, and our organization has been doing this for more than 15 years, all across the nation, heavily in Southern California. There are 8 of us that are part of the organization. We are known for our research on things like sextortion and social media exploitation, and also things like sex trafficking. What I want to talk to you about today, though, is one of the hardest subjects I ever talk about, and that is romance scams. Now, these are romance scams primarily of adults. And interesting enough, the average adult that is scammed, according to several of the latest research studies, that I've read, is that the average individual is a woman that is 40 to 69 years old. And they are the most targeted demographics for romance scams. Now, I have seen cases where men are involved in this also. And in many ways, men are even more vulnerable and more likely to lose a significant amount of money. The reason I chose to talk about this subject today is I woke up this morning in Riverside, California, and another headline, and I have researched so many romance scams. I can't tell you how hard it is. And I say to myself, you could hardly bring yourself to read the stories. That looks like a smart individual. Absolutely tragic. They're obviously accomplished because they've been able to have a successful career. Maybe many of them are widowed or widowers and like that. But also you say to yourself, if they're smart, if they're successful, how could they be so easily duped? And it's really, once you start to understand romance scams and how they work, it's really, really not all that hard to understand how easy it is for someone to relieve others of their money. According to the FBI, in 2025, romance scams showed 1.3 billion, that's with a B, billion, $1.3 billion in loss just in 1 year across the United States. 34% of current online daters reported being targeted by a scam. So it is more and more prevalent. And with artificial intelligence, it's going to be growing like crazy. This is the reason why I felt it is important for people to understand how this crime works and also remind those that may have heard about it before that this is getting more and more sophisticated because of advanced technology. Of the 34% of the current online daters that reported being targeted by a scam, of those people, 64% fell victim to it. So these often will start on a dating site. Tinder is common, Hinge, Grindr's an LGBTQ site. OkCupid is a common site that's out there. But it can also be accessing their victims on social media and even through direct messaging. Scammers will often move to WhatsApp or Telegram because they're encrypted. So one of the first things that I would say is that one of the first things you want to look for if you're on one of those online dating sites, watch out, is one of the first things they want to do is move you off that app. They'll say, hey, they're listening to us, they're recording everything we're saying, and like that. And I value my privacy. Let's talk directly. That should be a huge red flag. If you're new to dating, you simply say, no, I'm not going to do that yet. I'm not ready yet to do that. Because those dating apps, they use AI to watch for things that might indicate that that person on the other end is a scammer, or they're not someone that has passed their background check. And I can guarantee you those background checks aren't much, So, online dating sites accounted for 70% of the reported scams. So, what I want to share with you is to think about how easy it is going to be for scammers to operate in the future online because now you all have this generative AI. They can look like anybody, sound like anybody. You can Zoom with them, and you probably won't be able to tell the difference. So, this is important that you start to understand how it works. So, social media was the primary channel for initial contact in about 60% of the cases. So, it can happen on a dating site, but it can also be through a social media contact. So, I wanted to give you some thoughts on this because before I do, I want to come back to the story that I opened my eyes up this morning when I got up and saw this. The headline said 76-year-old perfect victim loses hundreds of thousands of dollars plus her Riverside home to a romance scam. Well, us in the business, we're not surprised. We've seen it many, many times. But somehow when you read this, it just breaks your heart. The victim here looks like a lovely lady. She looks smart. She looks accomplished. She looks like a wonderful woman. She is a widow, and that can be very, very tough. And quite frankly, scammers will absolutely target widows and widowers for what it's worth because of the fact that they're easy prey. All of us want to be loved. All of us are lonely if you don't have a strong social life going. And especially if you've lost a loved one in the last year, your world can feel upside down. And you will find yourself wanting to believe what is going on. It is absolutely real that someone cares about you, that they really love you, that they find you attractive, and that you might be whole again. So that is why in romance scams that people who have lost loved ones are so vulnerable. Well, that happened to the victim in this case. Her name's Bonnie Deuce, I believe it is. She's 76. And she became a widow a couple of years ago after her husband had a terminal illness. She had no children in this case, no one to check in on her. She didn't have a lot of close relatives. And she ended up meeting someone online. And before it was over, she lost everything she owned. Now she's 76 and going into old age, not only alone, but without any kind of financial security or cushion to work with. So I want to kind of back up a minute and talk about how do you handle this if you're alone and you're older and you're going on one of these dating sites. Well, I want to talk about how do you protect yourself. Now, before I do, I'd like to say that I know many people who met their spouse, their date, their loved one on a dating site, and they were successful in it, but they were also smart. This wasn't a kind of relationship where you start sending somebody money that you've never met. In their cases, they took it carefully. They met up in public. They took people with them. And I would suggest that to you. When you're meeting on a dating site, you don't know who you're talking to. So if you're meeting on a dating site, always do it in the early or middle part of the day. Don't drink alcohol. Take somebody with you and make sure your family knows the information on the person that you're meeting up with to protect yourself. However, in these cases, it can be turn out that it isn't somebody you like or somebody that's quite questionable and like that. But I want to give you some thoughts about how do you start to form a relationship and how do you look for warning signs that you might be going into a relationship that could end up being a victim of a scam. So one of the first things I'd say is watch if they try to move you off site. That is very, very important right off the bat. If you start to see that, run, baby, run. Don't even think about it. Just get out of there. Now, if you find somebody that you're quite interested in, I'm going to tell you that you need to do all the research you can and never, ever, ever send money to someone that you've met online, and especially if you have not met them in person. But anybody can claim to be anybody online. And so, one of the things that I'm going to suggest for you is to watch for some red flags. Are there some inconsistent stories here? If this looks like somebody you're really interested in, I'm going to say research, research, research. Know who you're talking to. These people, they create all different kinds of images. Do a Google image match or a reverse image search for this kind of thing and see what you can find. If they're starting to move into a serious relationship, you may want to even hire a private investigator to do a background check on them. I have one of the gals that works with us at Me and Kids is Linda Burke Herring. And by the way, her email address, I'll just throw that out, is OC Lady PI. That's like Orange County Lady Private Investigator, OC Lady PI at gmail.com. Now, I've talked to Linda quite a bit. She runs background checks all the time on people. That's part of the business that she does. So if you're not good at technology, you really are vulnerable. And so before I got involved with anybody online, I would run a research background, and it might cost you $100 or something to find out what they're doing. I'm not quoting that, by the way. I don't know what Linda charges, but my point is, if you're meeting people online, pay attention. Now, this could be very, very exciting, but watch for these warning flags like inconsistent stories, or they're always going to meet up with you, but for whatever reason they can. Now, many romance scams, they will say that they're halfway around the world. They're in the military or on an assignment. They're a businessman and they're on a short-term assignment, or maybe they're on an oil rig and you can't reach them. All of those are huge red flags. Call me when you get back. Okay, we'll connect then, but not now. Okay, and never, ever, ever send money to someone you have never met. It's really that simple. This is not a normal business transaction. You're talking about someone who is claiming to care about you and love you. That is one of the first signs that this thing is moving way too quickly. They have these wonderful lines that they'll use, like, I'm so lucky to have met somebody like you. I just know that we were meant to be together out there. Or, I've never been this happy before until I met you. They will love bomb you really, really quickly. They go from A to Z before they really know anything about you. And so those are all big warning signs. They move you from one app to the other. They're not easily accessible so that you can actually have a real relationship. And they love bomb you very quickly. All of a sudden, you're the only person on earth that's going to make them happy. Well, that's good for your ego, but that's not good for your wallet. It's that simple. So, these are all things you need to evaluate if you're starting to find yourself infatuated with someone online. And the reason I say that is what I've just given you is all very practical stuff that the average person knows to do. But the challenge with romance scams is that they give you everything that your heart desires, except you can't verify any of it. And so you have a tendency to fall in love, the same as if you're dating a real life person right there in your community. But if you're dating a person right there in your community, you can validate all of that. You can go on a date. You can, check his credit or her credit. And by the way, men become victims of romance scams. I've seen it over and over. So, right off the bat, do an image reverse image search. Drag and drop over to Google Images. See how many other names they might be working under. What other pictures do they have out there? Uh, those are all very, very important. How likely are you to have a normal relationship? If they're halfway around the world in the military, or they're offshore, or they're on some temporary business assignment, how likely are you to be together where you can actually validate this kind of thing? So do all the research you can as possible yourself. Everything you can possibly find. Do the image search, see if they're operating under other names, see if you can find out, do they own any real estate? Do they have a previous job experience? And this is very, very important, especially if you're talking to somebody when you're 50, 60, 70 years old. You should be able to run an entire background online with that person and validate they are who they are. Now, it is not unfeasible that they're going to take somebody else's identity and it'll look good. So, in those cases, you might want to hire a private investigator to do a background check on that. Never, ever give out your personal information until you can absolutely validate who they are. That's very important. Even if they're not asking you for money, if they're asking you to invest, or they're asking for your personal information where they can steal your identity. These kinds of online frauds, they run the gamut. Everything from you willingly being in love and sending them money to them getting all your personal information and getting into your bank account themselves, or getting you to transfer money. So pay attention to all of that and say, how do I validate that this is real? Never, ever send money, no matter how good it sounds. Some of these people will get you to say, well, I'll buy cryptocurrency for you. I've made a lot of money on it myself. Or they will say things where they're looking for your personal information. So they're not so much wanting you to send money as them to be able to go in and clean out your bank account. But it is also important that you watch out if they're wanting you to send money. In my case, if any person said to me, hey, I'm on an oil rig, or I just need $1,000. A lot of times it's not a big amount of money, but they're trying to get you in the habit of filling in the blanks financially for them, so that as you go back and forth, you begin to operate as a team. I mean, if we're going to be married, then we need to be able to do this and this and this. And you want to prove that you're a true and valuable partner. And that's how you get locked in. I would suggest to you that you never allow another individual to advise you on investing online. Now, that's easier said than done, because you have all these investing sites that are out there. You will find that many scammers avoid any kind of video interaction or in-person contact, and they always have some emergency. That should be a red flag. You can say, I'm sorry, just can't help you right now, and see what happens. And that is very important. One of the things that I think is so important is that you go slowly and ask lots of questions. They ask questions of you. You ask lots of questions of them. And as I said in the beginning, research, research, research. Look up everything. Now, if this person comes in and says, this is our little secret, run, baby, run. And by the way, what I'm sharing with you is no different than what I share with your teenagers that are out there, because there are all kinds of scammers out there that want to violate kids, that want to get nudes of kids and like that. So watch out for it. Number one, they'll move you from one app to the other, or they'll take you off a dating site and say, let's talk directly. And two, then they will begin to say, this is our little secret. I don't care how good it sounds. Run, baby, run. Because you could easily lose absolutely everything. The reason I did that is because I read the story today of this lady, and my heart really bleeds for her. She's 76 years old. She lost her husband 2 years ago. Now she has lost everything. She has no money left, and she's lost her home. So she's having to spend the rest of her life, living on a small amount of income and living in an apartment with no one to care for her because she wanted to be loved. And that's how quickly this kind of thing goes on. So, one of the things I would reiterate with you is helping yourself or your friends, if your friends are victims of this, to overcome their denial. Go on to YouTube and look this up. Put in romance scams and listen to story after story after story. And you, if you're like me, you look at them and you go, oh my gosh, how could that possibly happen? They look like a reasonably intelligent individual who normally would never make bad decisions that would cost them everything they own. Well, it happens because people get lonely. And it also happens because criminals are very good at grooming their victims. And that's exactly what will take place here is they will groom you. They will come in and they'll give you everything you've been looking for. That's exactly how grooming works with teenagers, where they end up in sex trafficking. Well, for older people, they end up losing their life's fortune. So by grooming, here's what I mean. They tell you everything you want to hear. I've never known anybody like you. You make me laugh. I haven't laughed like this in years. I feel that I can trust you when I can't trust other people. On and on and on and on. And listen to all of that. I highly recommend that if you're in a relationship where you really cannot meet up with that person and they want money, no, no, and heck no. Get offline, stay offline, because these people aren't going to go away. If they think that you're vulnerable, they're not going to go away. The other thing that I would say is that one of the things you want to be very careful of is, giving out too much personal information. Sometimes they're not asking you to give them money as much as they're looking for inroads to take what you have. And that'll often be the kind of thing. There was a scam that I read about with a lady. I'm looking for her name right now. I forgot what it is now, but she would set up these men. Oh, here it is. Aurora Phelps, Phelps. She was a Las Vegas woman who targeted, allegedly, a dozen older men. She found her victims online and then she would love bomb them and then she would talk them into meeting her in Mexico. So in this case, she wasn't looking for money to be sent online as much as she was looking for a meetup in another country, in which case she then robbed them and also took all their personal stuff so that she could clean out their bank accounts. So what I want to share with you in this is be careful of what you give out, and especially in the early days with one of these. Research, research, research. A new person online, you need to know everything about them. How many videos are out there? Do an image match on there? Do they use a different name? All of these things are important to find out. And it's important to find out before you lose your life's fortune. Now, before I close this out, one of the things that I want to add on here is that in researching all of these cases of romance scams, one of the things I have seen is people who chase good money after bad. In other words, they've gotten involved and they've lost 10 or 15 or 20 or 25,000, and these people are really good about, okay, you lost that money, but I can help you get that money back if you just invest more money. It's kind of like when you're gambling in Las Vegas and you find that you've lost all of your money and you say, okay, I'm going to put in another 20 or another 50 or another 100. This time I will win. And they will often play that game with you. They will start to work up so that when you start to pull out and say, wait a minute, I can't lose any more money, they will come back with a whole new proposition and you will find yourself deeper in. One of the other things I want to say before we close, and that is if you are finding yourself vulnerable, first of all, if you're lonely and vulnerable, and you feel bad about yourself, do not go online for a relationship. That's a start. Number two, if you find yourself in a relationship and you've already lost a little bit and you're suspicious that this isn't quite right, but you don't want to give it up, I'm going to ask you to do something that would be very difficult, but I want you to think about it. Before you lose everything, go and find someone you trust to intervene for you. And from that point forward, you say to the person, I cannot give it to the person you're talking to online. I cannot give you any more money unless it is approved by my family or my banker. So here's the information. I'm going to my banker, I'm going to my family, and they will have to verify your story. But I am no longer allowed to take money out of the bank and send to you. Now, I hope you still think I'm cute, okay? But that needs to happen. One of the things that I've seen over and over is once you start sending money to someone online, you can't stop. You think, well, they care about me and we're about to meet up and we're going to get married and we're going to have everything we ever want. Or if I don't send this, then I'm going to lose everything else I've sent. And like that, that should be a red flag that you reach out for help. Now, that's very, very difficult because you're living in a fantasy world and you do not want to live in the real world. But I'm going to give you the hard facts. It'll be better to live in the real world right now while you still have some money left than to find yourself in the real world like these people where they have no home and they have no assets. The real world can be very, very tough sometimes. But sending money to someone that you have never met, and especially someone that is offshore, just because you've already lost money doesn't mean you need to keep sending. Reach out, ask for help, and get somebody else and say, I no longer can make these decisions while you still have money left in the bank. May not be all your money, but trust me, if that money's gone, it's gone. And you don't want any more of your money to be gone. So it's time to ask for help. I think romance scams are probably one of the most difficult crimes I've ever investigated and researched. It is simply heartbreaking because the victims are just really, really fine people. And most of them are very smart. Most of them are attractive. And most of them have been very successful. But they're lonely and they're vulnerable. And these people, especially in foreign countries, know that. And so we really have to deal with protecting ourselves, protecting our loved ones, and making sure that people that you'll never meet these are organized criminal groups overseas. This isn't some poor guy just scamming, although it can be. But much of this is organized crime, 105 billion a year. Trust me, this is organized, it's sophisticated, and they don't care what happens to their victims. This is all about getting your money and getting it overseas to criminal groups. Don't fall prey to it. Reach out and ask for help. Do not ever, ever send money online to someone you have never met. Just don't do it, okay? And in the meantime, ask for help. I hope that you never get started, but if you have been started in something like this, it is never too late to reach out and ask for someone to intervene on your behalf. My name is Opal Singleton, and the organization is Million Kids, millionkids.org. We normally do this for teenagers, but my heart just breaks when I see a grandma that has lost everything she owns and can no longer even afford her home. It is so necessary. And I believe that it's important to talk to each other, talk to your family, reach out for help, and like that. If you want to ask questions, you can always follow Million Kids, millionkids.org, and you can always write to me at Opal, OPAL, at millionkids.org. I hope this has been helpful. It is a sad subject, I know that. But here's the thing. If we educate ourselves, then we can keep an older person or even some of the younger people from losing their life savings, all because they want to be loved. It is one of the saddest crimes out there, but education's the key. So thank you for listening. I appreciate it, and I'll see you on the next podcast.